pump the AI narrative this bull run. Subscribe for more crypto fun facts. Bitcoin follows a 4-year cycle, and the bear market is a very difficult time for all market participants. Asset prices fall, market sentiment is very low, and seemingly good fundamental projects can go to zero almost overnight. In the last cryptocurrency bear market of 2022, there were many black swan events. Terra was an algorithmic-based stablecoin, and Luna was its native currency. It collapsed in May 2022. Celsius was a crypto lending platform that failed in June 2022. 3 Hours Capital was a crypto hedge fund that filed for bankruptcy in July 2022. Voyager was a regulated crypto broker which also filed for bankruptcy in July 2022. Sam Bankman-Fried's FTX was a cryptocurrency exchange which collapsed in November 2022. Subscribe for more crypto fun facts. The word crypto stands for cryptography, and cryptography has been around for thousands of years. It's a way of keeping secrets. Today, cryptography is a very advanced and complicated science, and it helps keep cryptocurrencies secure. It's one of the reasons why people find crypto and the underlying technologies behind crypto difficult to understand. For example, when humans want to communicate with each other, our brains turn information into language. When computers communicate with each other, they turn information into numbers, and cryptography encodes this information so it cannot be read without a key. Cryptography helps keep users' information hidden, transactions anonymous and secure. Subscribe for more crypto fun facts. In March 2020, the Fed turned on its money printers to help tackle the COVID-19 crisis. Trillions of dollars were pumped into the system to stop it from collapsing. More money was printed in the space of a few short months than the entire history of America. And even though 55 million people had been made jobless and many businesses had gone bankrupt, it was the financial markets that were prioritized to receive this money. Indeed, only a month later, the stock market had its best performing week in 82 years, while average Joe was lining up outside food banks. The current financial system is broken, it's unfair, and it's geared up to keep the rich rich and the poor poor. Bitcoin is the best form of money ever invented. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins for the whole of humanity for the whole of time. Subscribe for more crypto fun facts. Let's talk about FOMO and greed. Both of these emotions can be detrimental in crypto. They are associated with taking irresponsible, irrational, impulsive, and sometimes absurd trading decisions. FOMO stands for fear of missing out. It's that fear, that anxiety one has that if action is not immediately taken, a good opportunity will be missed. Greed is another negative emotion in crypto. It can influence people to take larger positions or to buy crypto with money they cannot afford to lose. Greed can go uncontrolled in the parabolic phase of the bull run. People get sloppy, they relax their risk management strategies. This is why we sometimes see traders suffering their worst losses after their best performing year. Subscribe for more crypto fun facts. Bitcoin versus gold. Bitcoin and gold are considered valuable assets. Indeed, Bitcoin is often referred to as digital gold. Gold is a stable form of value. It appeals to the conservative investor, whereas Bitcoin is a highly volatile asset, which has significantly outperformed gold as an investment. Both Bitcoin and gold are scarce. However, there are multiple untapped reserves of gold, both on Earth and in space, whereas Bitcoin has a hard cap of 21 million Bitcoins for the whole of humanity for all time. Gold is expensive and difficult to move, but Bitcoin is cheap and easy to move. In fact, Bitcoin can be moved anywhere in the world within a matter of minutes. Gold does have an established history of value. However, Bitcoin is the solution for the new digital age. Subscribe for more crypto fun facts. In crypto, either a narrative is pumping or it's dead. In October 2021, Facebook, one of the world's largest companies, announced it was going to change its name to Meta and focus on building the metaverse. Naturally, this caused hype in crypto metaverse projects, so much so that virtual plots of land was selling for millions of US dollars. Indeed, a virtual plot of land in the cryptocurrency project Sandbox sold for over 4.3 million US dollars, and in another project called Decentraland, a virtual plot of land sold for over 2.4 million US dollars. The hype for cryptocurrency metaverse projects was short-lived. User adoption was low, and today cryptocurrency metaverse projects are Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome back to another live stream on the Crypto Princess Show. Today I've got Crypto Seth with me. Seth, how are you today?
I'm doing very good. Hope you're all well.
So Seth, we're going to be covering a lot of things today, but just before we do that, I'd love to shout out the chat. Now, unfortunately, the way that this is set up, it's going to take me a while. Okay, so DJ Brian, well done. You got gold today. Then it's me. Then Mohammed, which is our lovely troll from Sin City Crypto's group as well. Words are weapons. Welcome. Crypto Cash. Taylor, welcome. Michael Cartwright, welcome. Silver, welcome. John Legend, welcome. Silver, Curtis, welcome. Rob C, he's another Brit, welcome. Joe Harvey, welcome. David, welcome. One of my mods. Oh, he's lovely. Mohammed, Haven Peak, welcome. Dogeball, welcome. Alexandra G, welcome, our mod queen. Great to see you today. And I'm just scrolling. Mike V, welcome. David Bowles, welcome. I need some new glasses. Seriously, I can't see. I'm going to come really close. Do mind my face. Oh my gosh. Oh, and Jesse, welcome. Another one of the mods, our chief mod. Michael, Cheaper, welcome. MetaMask OX, welcome. Crypto Cartel, welcome. I believe he's from your group, isn't he?
Yeah, I've seen a few people down below from my group. You know, Crypto Cash is a bit upset because he has the mod on my channel, but not yours.
Oh, bless him. Brian, I'm not late. It should be starting at 4. It's 4:02 now. Am I late? I do apologize if I am. Harp, welcome, brother. How are you? Rob C, Alexandra G, Mohammed again. Gosh, you guys have been busy. ES, another one of our lovely trolls. Lovely, lovely people. It's like me and G. Do you remember when you first started your live? Well, not when you first started your live streams, but when I first got to know you, I used to troll you. Do you remember that?
I do remember.
Yeah, I used to embarrass him so much. I've calmed down a lot. I'm so nice to him now. Seriously. Yasser, welcome. Yassine, welcome. Crypto Princess, welcome. She's in the chat as well. Blocky, welcome. Oh gosh. Yassine, welcome. ES, Blocky. Oh, Grandpa, welcome. Crypto Cash, welcome. Grandpa, ES, Mike, Michael Cartwright. Oh, Glyph, welcome. And I think we've got to the bottom. If I have missed you out, Goldie, welcome. If I have missed you out, just spam the chat. I don't want to miss anyone out. So today, so for those people who are unaware, me and Crypto Seth go back 2 years now. And he was actually my first mentor when I came into crypto. We do have a really healthy relationship. We don't always see eye to eye, but we do always get on. So Seth, oh, and if the mods can put in Seth's channel down below so you guys can all go and subscribe over there, that would be amazing. Glyphs trolling. Oh my gosh. Right, okay. So Crypto Seth. Now, Crypto Seth is a degen investor, just like me, before I became a trader as well. So Seth, if we compare... Today we'll be covering the upcoming Fed meeting, institutional investors, and manipulation. For those who are not aware, I absolutely love talking about market manipulation. The 4-year cycle, Altseason, and how Seth himself is positioning himself for this bull run. So, Seth, we have the Fed meeting coming up in, is it about 2 weeks? What are your thoughts on the upcoming Fed meeting?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also I do want to say welcome, everyone. I haven't really spoke much. I've had Crypto Princess giving an introduction to everyone, but hopefully I'm welcome here on Crypto Princess's live stream. Anyways, to answer your question, my take about the next Fed meeting is as follows. I think everybody is expecting a rate cut, although I don't really believe the next Fed meeting is the most important meeting to pay attention to. I think the one after that is the most important to pay attention to, the one in June. Mainly because we have had the announcement by Jerome himself that we will potentially get a halting of QT, quantitative tightening. And that's essentially when the Federal Reserve stops selling their financial assets, and then we could start to see liquidity start flowing into markets rather than exiting markets. And when that does happen, that's a potential catalyst for the beginning of somewhat of an altcoin season. Now, ideally, we want the announcement of QE, but that'll probably only happen if the economy continues to get worse and worse and worse. Right now, I wouldn't say the economy is in as bad as a position in which QE is needed as a monetary policy to be a preventative method to a recession or an economic crash. So I don't particularly think we're going to get that in the next 1 month or even 2 months. But at least a halting of QT is exactly what we're looking for. Because at the end of the day, how markets work, at least affecting crypto, is we need new liquidity to flow in for our altcoins to essentially perform well. And when that new liquidity performs in, people tend to be more risk on rather than risk off right now. Most investors right now are pretty risk off, mainly due to the economic turmoil and geopolitical conflict with Trump and Xi Jinping, with Trump and Jerome Powell. I know Trump seems to be the reoccurring factor there, but there's a lot of economic turmoil and uncertainty. So people are quite risk off. They're not willing to take risk right now in the market. And that coupled with the Federal Reserve selling their financial assets, no new liquidities flowing into crypto, it's really not ideal situation. So in my perspective, to answer your question, the next Fed meeting in, I think, 6th, 7th of May isn't really the most important one. It's the one after that in June that is the most important one because we're getting a very crucial decision. And here's a good way to think about it. How many Fed meetings have we had now? People place so much importance on them and they pass and no one talks about them. Are we going to get a rate hike? Are we going to get a rate cut? And they've all passed because very unimportant monetary policies are being discussed at these meetings, right? We're talking about rate cuts and rate hikes. At the end of the day, QE is deployed when standard monetary policies, such as rate cuts, are no longer effective. That is the definition of when QE is deployed. So we're waiting for more important monetary policies to be passed, such as halting QT or deploying QE. So that's my take.
I think you're right with that as well. There's been a lot of talk of recessionary fears in 2025. It's not something that, is sort of baked into the 4-year cycle. The reason being, Bitcoin has never existed in a recessionary environment. What are your views of recessionary fears in 2025?
Well, to add one thing right there, Bitcoin has existed in a recessionary environment since inception, right? Bitcoin was created in 2008 amidst a financial crisis of 2007 to 2009. And some people do believe the purpose of Bitcoin is essentially a hedge against recessions, a hedge against financial crisis. Now, what I will say is, I think the financial crashes are needed for Bitcoin to essentially perform well in some sense, because people tend to invest into Bitcoin, or initially they invested into Bitcoin due to a distrust in the current financial systems. That is the reason people fled to a decentralized cryptocurrency. We don't talk about this much now. Obviously, we all care about making money here. So do I. I'm no different. I could care less about the decentralization. I could care less about the transparency. I'm here to make as much money as possible, and show to you guys. Make as much money as possible so that you don't care whatever monetary policies are passed, because you have so much money. You're sat at the beach in Dubai on Palm Jumeirah sipping a cocktail. But beside the point, the purpose of crypto was a hedge against traditional markets. It was due to the lack of trust of centralization and continually printing money, debasing the currency, that Bitcoin even thrives in the first place. So in a weird way, we need the financial crashes to show the importance of why you need to invest into Bitcoin. And the funny thing is, there was a financial crash in its inception. Now, you can look at it in different ways. You can look at it in a more technical way and say, well, okay, well, the computer scientists, they understand the utility of blockchain technology. They look at it in a more utilitarian view. Therefore, they could understand in a poor market or in a good market the value of cryptocurrency. But the average person is not a computer scientist. The average person isn't here creaming over blockchain technology, understanding its utility, and they'd still utilize or invest into it. They need to understand it in a very simple manner. And the simple manner is distrust in traditional markets. Bitcoin negates that. Bitcoin stops those issues from being a thing. And that's how you convince normal people to invest into Bitcoin. So to answer your question simply, in a way, we do needed the crash. We do need crashes, and we needed the initial crash, 2007, 2009, for Bitcoin to have its success and to continue to succeed.
Welcome to Allset and Jupiter. Bitcoin, like you just said, Bitcoin was born out of a recession. Would a recessionary environment, would a recession accelerate Bitcoin's adoption or hinder it?
Would a recession
accelerate its adoption or hinder it?
Accelerate its adoption or hinder it? It's a very good question, because no one technically knows what would happen, because we did have Bitcoin during the 2007, 2009 crash, but that was its inception. It wasn't well adopted, well known. The actual liquidity, the market cap of Bitcoin was minute back then. It's one of those weird questions. Now, in my opinion, it's a double-edged sword. I think a crash would show the distrust in traditional markets and propel Bitcoin's utility further. Therefore, more people would finally take a more utilitarian view of Bitcoin. They would start to say, okay, well, I actually see the value of Bitcoin. Rather than it just being a thing to make me money, I actually see the value in Bitcoin, because everyone would have dealt with a crash. Because what you need to understand is most people that invest into crypto are pretty young, right? They're not, 70, 80, 90. So they haven't really been through a proper financial crash and felt the effects of the financial crash. Or they've only felt it once. Now, going through multiple financial crashes, you'll actually start to understand the value and purpose of Bitcoin. So it would help in the sentiment sense that people move away from a fast money making scheme to a more utilitarian view of Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, we cannot deny the fact that if we had a crash, that's liquidity coming out of markets. And Bitcoin right now is tied to, let's say, M2 money supply. So global liquidity, as liquidity increases, Bitcoin's increasing too. However, one caveat of that is when we do see M2 money supply increasing, global money supply increasing, we do have one fear in most people, institutions and investors alike. And that is inflation. Now, the question is Bitcoin a hedge against inflation? Because, we have global liquidity increasing. Potentially, Bitcoin acts as a hedge against inflation. So if we have a crash, we have a recession, well, Bitcoin may start to go up. Now, my view, this isn't based in anything other than my perspective, because at the end of the day, we don't know the future. We don't actually know what would happen to Bitcoin. But in my view, the sentiment of Bitcoin and people adopting more of a utilitarian view of it will increase. I think short term, Bitcoin would have a crash. But I think Bitcoin will act as a hedge against traditional markets and eventually start to go up and not have a long stretch out bear market like the rest of traditional markets. That's kind of what my take is on, if Bitcoin would be successful during a financial crash or, get impeded. So that's my take.
Okay, awesome. I hope the chat behaves.
I can see the chat seems quite funny.
So let's talk about ETFs and institutional investors and institutional adoption. The ETFs and institutional adoption has already disrupted the natural rhythm of the cycle. How are such large players shaping this bull run?
Yeah, so what I would say is this bull run is definitely different to previous bull runs for the matter that you just brought into our attention. The fact that we have actual institutions involved now. Go back to, let's say, not the last cycle, but the cycle before that, the 2017 bull run. I only came in at the very end of that, so I didn't really experience that one myself, but that was basically just retail investors. Of course, we had institutions driving it, but it was mostly just retail investors. Then 2021 brought more institutions. And then this cycle has brought even more institutions, and not just institutions. It's brought countries. It's brought governments. It's brought everyone to crypto. Crypto is no longer just perceived as a quick money scheme, which it still is, actually. That's a lie. Yeah, but it isn't perceived as just solely a scam. It's now perceived as more legitimate. So ultimately, this is just a net positive for crypto. Now, obviously, when you do bring the big players into the game, you do bring the regulation. Now, this was a big talking point like a year or 2 years ago. We always used to discuss, is regulation a good thing or a bad thing for crypto? That was always a topic of debate.
It was, yep.
And I was always of the opinion that regulation is ultimately good because regulation allows for the big players to actually come into crypto. And that's essentially what has happened, because as we've had ETFs being passed, we've had more and more big players come into crypto. BlackRock ETF, Grayscale, we're seeing a lot come into crypto. And that's exactly what we want. When one country suddenly, let's say, utilizes Bitcoin as a reserves, it has to be a big country. It has to be a first world country, because we had El Salvador utilizing Bitcoin, but no other country seemed to care. Other countries probably looked at El Salvador and thought, oh, what a bunch of idiots, using Bitcoin as their reserves. Give it a couple years, they're going to be in financial crisis as Bitcoin crashes, right? But now the United States have utilized Bitcoin as their reserves, or at least mentioned utilizing crypto as a reserve. They're going to start a Bitcoin reserve. And now suddenly, we're probably going to see loads of countries follow. So the big players coming to crypto is a net positive for crypto, leads to more adoption a lot. So I'm bullish on it.
Seth's dropping alpha. Can the mods put his link to his YouTube channel in the chat?
They did put the link.
Oh, they did. Put it
I did
again.
see the link.
Hi, JC. How are you? JC's in Las Vegas, so he'll be helping us when we go out there. That's really good that you said that about institutional investors and countries and all the rest of it. Have these big, massive, large players reduced or increased the volatility in crypto?
That's an interesting question, because I think there's only one answer, and it sounds crazy to say this now because we're amidst a 90% crash into the market and we're all crying about it. But obviously, it's led to less volatility, because at the end of the day, it's more like a mathematical question. There is more liquidity into the market, bigger liquidity. Therefore, obviously, we're prone now to less significant dumps than the past. Before, when we had basically no liquidity in the market, you could move projects up and down with $100 and you would see it going up like 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Even at the depths of this bear market, not this bear market, because we're not in one, or maybe we are in one, depends on your definition. But back at the very start of this cycle, coming off of the bear market of last cycle, you buy $100 in a project because the liquidity is so low. It's doing like 50% move, 60% move. We'd see altcoins fly like 10x, 20x, 30x.
Time out, Mohammed, please.
Being bought. It's like it was just so small that projects can fly. But now that isn't the case. And it's actually one of the main reasons we had such a big crash. We had such a big crash because altcoins were heavily inflated. Altcoins were like sitting at $100 million to $1 billion in market cap, when in the past they were sat at 10 million, 1 million. Altcoins needed that crash. But the point was, when altcoins were at that peak, they needed such vast amounts of liquidity to actually move up. And in this circumstance, they needed to crash, and the liquidity was much lower in the past. Therefore, to answer your question simply, not to ramble on too much, I would say it's less volatile than the past because there's much more liquidity in the market. It needs much more liquidity to move projects up and down.
By any chance, do you think that the institutional investors are looking to sell at the top, or do you think they're hodling for the future, if that makes sense? Do you think they're going to hodl their Bitcoin?
I would say we have to break down what we mean by institutions. It's somewhat of a buzzword that we all just throw out. Like in regards to countries, I would in the past have said, obviously, hodl through people like El Salvador, and now we have the United States. But at the end of the day, it's not guaranteed. We saw Germany sell their Bitcoin like a bunch of clowns. They missed out on $1 billion of profit. So it's not guaranteed that countries would hodl their crypto simply because they say they're going to start buying it. So that's not even certain in itself that countries would hodl. But the narrative will most likely be that countries would hodl. Now, institutions, the sole goal of an institution and a business is to make a profit. So obviously there will be selling. Now, if they believe there is more profit in long-term holding Bitcoin, then that's what they'll do. If they believe there's more profit in trading Bitcoin, that's what they will do. Hedge funds will most likely trade. Institutions that will include Bitcoin in their reserves or balance sheets will most likely hodl or at least mid to long-term hold Bitcoin.
Okay, awesome. A big shout out to Poman, who's just arrived, and Julie. And if the mods can put Julie's YouTube channel in the chat. Julie's another YouTuber. Do check her out. She's lovely. So what do you actually think about this particular cycle? Do you still think that we're on track to have an actual all-time high for Bitcoin, just Bitcoin, in Q4 or thereabouts this year?
I don't think we should be looking at Bitcoin in cyclical terms. I think the 4-year cycle has been broken. Is that an issue? No, not really. Markets don't need to work on an arbitrary cycle that was mainly due to halvings that are no longer effective in the market, simply because most of the Bitcoin is being mined. So I think we need to look at Bitcoin as bigger than that. When you look at Bitcoin as bigger than that, it doesn't really matter if the high is in Q4, because Bitcoin will increase indefinitely. You have to look at Bitcoin as the future medium of exchange. And when you study the past mediums of exchange throughout history and time, you can understand how they can be changed. And you can understand how they can go on 10, 20, multi-decade bull runs. Like in my perspective, looking at Bitcoin as will it form its high in Q4 is a very small-minded view of Bitcoin and its utility. I think Bitcoin is the future medium of exchange. I think it will be adopted by the masses. Therefore, it will form a high whenever it's going to form a high. But the high will continue to get higher and higher and higher and higher until we probably reach $1 million Bitcoin.
Hi, Waitensy. Waitensy's just joined us. Another Brit. We got all the Brits in the chat today. Love the Brits. So what has surprised you the most about this cycle?
What surprised me the most about this cycle? Very hard to surprise. Some people would most likely say the fact that Bitcoin formed a high, pre-halving. That seems to be the main thing that surprised a lot of people. I'm not too surprised by that, simply because it makes sense. We had like the most bullish news in crypto history. What a surprise we formed the high before the halving. It's like we had BlackRock, the largest asset manager of trillions of dollars worth of properties and investments in general, right? Buying crypto, buying Bitcoin. Like, great. Makes sense why it would form a high, before the halving. Because at the end of the day, putting importance on the halving is, again, putting importance on like cyclical theory, on the 4-year cycle. It's like, oh, the 4-year cycle is this cyclical theory that must be obeyed due to the greater powers of the cryptoverse. So then if we break that, well, suddenly something's bad or something's wrong. It's like, no. At the end of the day, that's mainly due to the halvings, to the Bitcoin mining rewards being halved. That's why that was the case, supply shocks, etc. But now we have bigger powers in play. The supply shock was the biggest power in play before, but now it's not. Now it's institutions, now it's governments, now it's countries, now it's presidents. There's now bigger powers in play than a simple Bitcoin mining rewards being halved. So that is the answer that most people will probably give that surprised them the most of the cycle, but to me, it's already a surprise. So to be honest, I can't really answer your question. Maybe gaming performing so poorly. That's my biggest surprise. There we go.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So what?
Gaming was massive last cycle. So to see it performing so poorly now, it's, somewhat of a surprise.
So what is actually wrecking people so much this cycle? Is it fear or is it greed?
So I'll take. So you want me?
Oh, Steph,
What?
we lost you there just for a second. I'll start that again. What's wrecking people more? Is it fear or greed?
What's wrecking people more? Is it fear or greed? Well, in terms of being, in a way, I would say that fear, I know it sounds ridiculous to say this, but fear and greed are two sides of the same coin, in the sense that fear is usually fear of missing out. And you only have fear of missing out because you want to make as much money as possible this cycle, which you could argue is just greed, right? So it's all greed at the end of the day. But what I would say is what has wrecked the most people this cycle is not selling. It's simply just having too much. I don't want to say like being a maxi, but I would say the thing that's wrecked the most people this cycle is ignoring the clear data points and signals that are telling you that it's oversold and placing too much importance on pieces of news that you believe are so valuable that crypto should infinitely go up. In essence, for example, the main reason a lot of people didn't sell in March was because we had BlackRock buying crypto. Why would you sell your altcoins? BlackRock was buying crypto. It's placed so much importance on that just piece of news. It's not like they were already buying trillions. It's just a piece of news itself. We place so much importance on that you would have seemed like an idiot for selling despite all the signals telling you to sell. So I would say we're placing so much importance on pieces of news that are bullish, don't get me wrong. But in the short term, right, we should probably pay more attention to the signals in the short term telling us that we should sell rather than the news that would really affect crypto in the long term. So in terms of fear and greed, what's affected the most people? I think that, again, two sides of the same coin. I think it's all greed. Fear is greed. It's the fear of missing out, which is just greed because you want to make money. But what I would say is the thing that's wrecked the most people is placing so much importance on long-term pieces of news that would affect crypto on the short term.
One thing that Drew from Blockchain Basement, he came on and he told his crypto story, and something that he said, which I found really fascinating, was that he always sold when he wanted to show off his portfolio. So that for him was a signal to start selling. I thought that was amazing, and he actually got it right. He did do well. Okay, so should we go? Oh, before we go on to Altseason, let's talk about M2. I know everyone's talking about it. So Bitcoin does tend to follow the M2 money supply, which is increasing. Based on that, do you also think Bitcoin and the crypto market will go up?
So Bitcoin has been following M2 money supply as of right now, which is obviously a good thing. If liquidity in the global markets are increasing, it's good to see that Bitcoin is following suit. It shows people are interested in Bitcoin and they're looking to it as an investment. But if we do see M2 global, supply increase too rapidly, we have to understand why it's increasing. And it tends to increase due to central banks printing more money. Now, that continued to happen, that could lead to inflation. That could lead to a possible recession. And if that does happen, the question is, will Bitcoin continue to follow it? If it starts to crash, it starts to go down, will Bitcoin do the same thing? And that's just what we don't really know. We don't know. This whole question all relies on, is Bitcoin a hedge against inflation and traditional markets? Because right now it's following markets in the sense that M2 supply has gone up, global liquidity has gone up, Bitcoin is following, right? DXY has gone down. As the dollar weakens, people are looking for alternative investments, and Bitcoin is going up because people are using Bitcoin as an alternative investment. But if we do have a financial crash, if we do have hyperinflation and a possible recession, will Bitcoin continue to act as a hedge, or will it just follow suit? Because it's following right now. And that's what we really just don't know. We can sit here and speculate, but the only way to tell it is for that financial crash to happen, and then we will see what happens.
Okay. Let's talk about Altseason now, because that's something that, that's your bread and butter. When is alt season? I know you've heard this question. You probably hear it 10 times every single day.
Mhm.
When is alt season, and why haven't we seen an alt season yet this year?
We haven't seen an altcoin season yesterday due to many reasons. Number one, retail are simply too poor. They don't have money. Retail don't have money to throw into the markets. And this is mainly due to the Federal Reserve's influence, because the banks, the commercial banks, their reserves are completely depleted. And they're waiting for the Federal Reserve again to make a decision in terms of interest rates to favor the commercial banks. But they don't want to do so yet. They're forcing the commercial banks to buy financial assets from them right now. That's what's happening. The Federal Reserves are forcing the commercial banks to buy financial assets from the Federal Reserve. So their reserves are depleted. And because their reserves are depleted, we have very unfavorable interest rates for the consumers, for you and me. Therefore, people are not getting loans from banks because it's just not worthwhile to get loans from banks. So we're simply waiting for liquidity to be injected into the market by the Federal Reserve to then increase the depleted reserves of the commercial banks. Therefore, they can offer more favorable loans to consumers. And when they do offer them more favorable loans to consumers, they'll have more money in their hands. And when there's more liquidity in the market in general, people are more risk on rather than risk off. For example, if commercial banks are making money from giving loans, that means the yield for savings is going to be very, very low, because they don't need to make earnings from savings, because that's what they're doing right now. The commercial banks are making money through savings because their reserves are depleted. So they're incentivizing you to put your money into the bank and lock it up for a long period of time, offering high savings yields, because they're not making money from loans. But when they are making money from loans because their reserves are depleted, what that's going to allow, right, is consumers like you and me to get more favorable loans, and then we have money in their hands. Then the savings yield goes down. Therefore, people aren't locking away their money because it's just not worth it. What's the point of locking up your money for a year or 5 years getting very low yield? It's not worthwhile. So basically, consumers have more money in their hands and they're not locking it away. So what are consumers going to do when they have more money in their hands and they're not locking it away? Because obviously they make terrible financial decisions like all of us. They're going to throw it into markets to make money. And that's essentially what's going to lead to altcoins performing well when retail have more money, when commercial banks have more money. Now, this whole process I just explained is essentially what would happen if QE gets deployed by the Federal Reserve. Because when QE gets deployed by the Federal Reserve, they'll go buy a ton of financial assets that will drive up the price of those financial assets when they buy. Therefore, people aren't going to invest into bonds. It's just not going to be favorable because they're just being drove up. The price is being drove up. The yield isn't there anymore. And then people are going to become more risk on. Institutions are going to become more risk on. Everyone has more money. They're going to be more risk on. And then altcoins will start to go up because people throw their money into markets and they have a more risk on take. So that's basically what we're waiting for. Look, honestly, we can spend all day talking about the next rate cut or rate hike, but ultimately it's not important. How many have we had now? And has your decisions from interpreting each of those, FOMC meetings led to you making more money? And the answer is no. Like the last Fed meeting we had, your decision based on spending all your time and energy interpreting that, did it lead to you making more money? The answer is no. So everyone keeps placing so much importance on these meetings and they're just being traded. Take a look at the shorters and longers during these events. They're getting wrecked. All you should look for is the important monetary policies that's going to dictate whether liquidity will flow into this market. That's why June is important, not May. Because in June, we may potentially get a halting of QT, potentially get a halting of selling financial assets, and potentially get more money flowing into markets, which would lead to altcoin season. So again, we can waste our time talking about macro all day, talking about the next FOMC meeting, but it's not going to make you any more money because no important monetary policies are going to be passed at that meeting.
Okay, so when we do get an alt season, are we going to have a traditional alt season where everything goes up, or will alt season be different this cycle due to the amount of utility projects? If we exclude memes.
Okay, can you repeat that one more time? You cut out for me.
So if we do have an alt season, or when we do have an alt season, would it be like a traditional alt season where everything goes up? Specifically talking about utility projects, or is this cycle different because of the amount of utility projects? Are there just too many utility projects for us to have a traditional alt season now?
Yeah, I'm really against this narrative of we have too many coins. I hear it propagated around the whole crypto space. I'm so anti. There's just too many coins in crypto. It's like, okay, I understand when we look at the data that says there's a lot of coins, but you need to understand that's mainly because you can now create a coin like this. You can create a coin of AI 1 second and create a coin. Most of those coins have no liquidity, so no one can even trade them in the first place. And also, when most investors go to look for a coin, I'm not talking about you who spends 24/7 in crypto on these Dex Screener and all these other screeners, Dex tools, looking at coins all day, all the DGen, 10K market cap coins. That is not the average crypto investor. They are looking at the same 1 to, let's say, 3,000 altcoins. They're on CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, CryptoRank. They're listening to influencers who are talking about the same 1 to 2 to 3,000 altcoins. So most of that liquidity is going to be concentrated anyways. Like if you have to sit here and think per narrative, how many great altcoins there are, based on your own independent research and even confluence from other influencers, let's take RWA. You're not going to find more than 10 great coins. You really won't. Ondo is the best high cap. Mantra isn't, just rug 90%. So there's only one high cap for RWA, and that is Ondo, right? And when you go down the list for lower market cap coins, you're going to get to like $1 million market cap like this, and no one's going to invest into those coins. So people are going to be pretty much at the same altcoins, looking at the same altcoins, investing into the same altcoins. So yeah, of course, there's more coins, but most people aren't even seeing those more coins. Most people are seeing the same 1 to 3,000, and that's me being generous. In my opinion, people are seeing the same, like, let's say, 1K or less altcoins, right? So I don't really think it's a big issue. In terms of that affecting altcoin season, not really. Everything's going to go up in terms of altcoin season, as it always does. Everything will go up. The liquidity will go up. Everything will go up. That's always been the case. That will never change. But what I do think is specific altcoins are obviously going to go up more than others. The question isn't really, is altcoins going to go up? Is everything going to go up? That will always be the case. But I think select altcoins and select narratives will go up more than others. And that's essentially the purpose of my channel. I'm looking at what altcoins I believe will go up the most. So yeah, that's my take.
Okay, now the reason why I spoke about utility coins before meme coins is because me and you, we do love our utility projects. Yeah. So we've seen a lot of institutional investors coming into the space. We did see a lot of retail get in when we had the Trump coin, but they didn't really stay in the market. They didn't really stick around. When retail does return, is retail going to be looking at institutional projects? Utility projects or memes? So when the institution does come back, are they going to go to utility projects or are they going to go to memes again?
Great question. They'll go to whatever makes them money and whatever believes will make them money. That's always how it's been. In the past, let's say the last cycle, let's not go before the last cycle because retail wasn't really there. The last cycle, people invested into what they believed would make them money. People didn't invest into utility coins because they believed in the tech. That's a false narrative. No one believes in the tech in terms of the actual utility of that specific altcoins. We all believe in the underlying philosophy and infrastructure of cryptography and blockchain technology in terms of its decentralization, transparency. But in terms of that specific altcoin, no one actually believes that Filecoin is going to replace Google Cloud and Tencent Cloud. No one believes that, right? They invested into it because they believed it will make them money. And that will always be the case. As long as utility coins get marketed by influencers and we have influencers saying to those retail, this coin will make you money, then they're going to buy it. Why wouldn't they buy it? Especially if the influencers track record and such. So people like to make it seem like this cycle is going to be different. People only invest into memes. No. People seem to forget. This cycle was not the cycle of memes. Did you realize we were performing so well in 2022 to 2023, 2023 to 2024 with utility altcoins? Utility altcoins did thousands of X's. Take Casper, did 1,000X. Take several of my altcoins, Viot, Singularity Net, coming out of the bear market. They both did 100X. Demetria, 100X. AI coins did hundreds of X's. We saw utility coins do great, perform very well. And then at the tail end, after 2024, we saw a good 6 months where memes did well. Now, some people, for some reason, see those 6 months and then seem to forget that the previous 2 years, utility coins did well, just focusing on that 6 months where memes did well. So nothing's changed. Literally nothing has changed. Memes will do well. Utility will do well. They just do well at different times. And it's quite funny because memes did well at the very end and the very top of this market. They did very well, and then the market completely crashed and rubbed. And that's always been the case with memes. Literally every single time. Utility performs well, and at the very tail end, memes have a massive rally. They perform well. That's typically the end of the bull market. Now, I'm not saying the bull market's over because that's just semantics in terms of definitions. But it's evident that's the case, and that's what's happened. So there's always a time and a place for utility and memes. I'm open to both. I don't care. Both will make you money. In terms of will people focus more on one than the other? No, they'll focus on whatever makes them money, as they always have. If I tell you this meme coin will make you $1 million, you'll buy it. If I tell you this AI coin will make you $1 million, you'll buy it. And that will be the case for every single coin in crypto space. Just needs great marketing and people will buy it. No one actually cares if it's utility or memes.
Guys, Seth is dropping so much alpha. Please hit the likes. Okay, we're gonna come back to 100x coins, but just before we do, what is the biggest misconception or the biggest thing people are getting wrong about Altseason this cycle?
What is the thing people are getting the most wrong this cycle?
Either the most wrong or what's their biggest misconception?
Or biggest misconception?
What's going wrong? Because a lot of people are struggling. A lot of portfolios are down. What's wrong? Where did we go wrong?
Obviously, the obvious solution to that is people need to exercise the ability to sell their crypto. This is something that we're all to blame for, to be honest. Like all of us influencers that have been around for multiple cycles, who've had channels for multiple years. We all had this huddle, long-term investment mentality.
Diamond hands.
Diamond hands mentality of crypto. And that is all because of the 4-year cycle. It's all because we place so much importance on the 4-year cycle that we would exactly follow the 4-year cycle every single time, that it's okay that we don't sell even though we're up 20x because it'll continue to go up based on the 4-year cycle. And then we detached. We didn't sell up at 20x, and then pretty much everybody got wrecked. So the biggest mistake is actually placing too much importance on the 4-year cycle, long-term investing, being a diamond hands. We should trade more often. When you are up huge amounts, and 20x, 30x is a huge amount, you should sell, you should move on. So selling is the biggest issue everyone's had this cycle. Now, in terms of biggest misconceptions this cycle, I would say a big misconception is that things are very different this cycle. They've all changed. I think that's just complete hogwash, to be honest. I think the same things are moving the market as it did in the past. Like we had a good economy back in 2017, so we didn't need QE, but last cycle we had QE. And what is QE? Liquidity being injected into markets. That's all we need. And that's the case in every single market that performs well. Liquidity gets injected, money starts flowing in, then it starts to perform well. That's all it is every single time. Yeah, we can add on these complex terms and fancy terminology, try and make it all complex, but it's the same thing every single time. Investors need to be more risk on because crypto is a high risk market and they need liquidity to do so. When they have money and money's printed from thin air, they're more likely to be risk on and throw it into markets. When people have no money, what are they going to do? If you have no money, you're not going to be going to Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and Dubai Mall, right? You're going to be going to Al Cruz, Al Barsha, spending it in a hypermarket, on little things. You're going to be risk off. You're going to be saving your money. You're not going to be spending it all willy-nilly. So obviously markets aren't going to increase if investors are risk off, is it? So it's all like the same underlying concepts, the same underlying principles of how markets work. So it's really not complex, but people always, for some reason this cycle, it's the biggest misconception. Want to make it seem like everything is so different, everything has changed. It's just cope. Just cope. That's all it is. It's cope.
And they react to every single price movement.
Oh, absolutely. But that's just human psychology, isn't it? Most people aren't very stoic. They're very emotional people. I bet most of the people that complain about the price of crypto are probably the same people that are whinging and whining in their real life. Whinging and whining that, I don't know, the package wasn't delivered exactly on time, and they complain about that, and they let that ruin their day. Oh, my Amazon package was meant to come today. Why is it coming tomorrow? You know, or you know, having arguments with their wife all day or whatever.
Okay, so can altcoins still deliver a 100x return, or is it too late in the market? So if you're already not in an altcoin, are 100x is not possible anymore, or are they possible anymore?
100x's are more possible than they ever have been this cycle, because altcoins have crashed so much all the way back down to those lows we saw back early in the cycle, which means they are certainly possible. If someone asked me this question, is it possible for altcoins to 100x? And we are back in March 2024. Absolutely not. They were so inflated. We had projects like AI Tech and AGI, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in market cap when they launched at 2 million. Right? So they were inflated, but now they're back down to lower levels where it certainly is possible. And look, you don't have to believe it. Go look at the charts of last cycle. We had the COVID crash, an economic collapse due to COVID. Coronavirus, right? We saw Bitcoin go down 35%. We saw others, total 2, total 3, all crash as well. Huge margins. And guess what? Altcoins are thousands of X's. People back then were thinking the economy could not get worse. Crypto couldn't get worse. Everything was crashing. Everything was dumping. It's not possible. And then we had 1,000x, 100x, 500x, 200x. And people right now are thinking, oh, bull run's canceled, bull run's over, we're not going to pump, we're not going to go up. Look at the economy, inflation. Oh, we're in a recession. QE gets deployed like last cycle. QE was deployed, I think, March 20th. Boom. Everything exploded. So, same perspective. 100x's are more possible than ever this cycle, in my opinion. Now is the time to be investing and buying, not financial advice.
Well, yeah, obviously nothing here is financial advice, but smart money is buying at the moment. So we should always, well, I do like to follow smart money. Okay, so we're going to look into the future now. So, sorry, looking forward. Just quickly, a shout out to all my mods who are doing a lovely job keeping the chat going. So Seth, I know you have your own YouTube channel, you have your own Discord as well, you have your own VIP group, etc. So there's not a huge amount that you can give us, a huge amount of alpha, but with the alpha that you can give us, how are you positioning yourself for 2025?
I think the main thing people need to do this cycle is to remain very well diversified. Everyone always seems to have a one-way or the highway approach. Oh, I only think memes are going to perform well. Utilities crap, they're scams, and they only invest into memes. Those people are being completely wrecked right now. You need to have a diversified approach. And I think the main narratives that people need to invest in are AI, RWA, gaming, memes, and high cap layer ones. What I now actually believe is certain narratives are more favorable to invest into with high or low market cap. So basically, in terms of layer ones, I think people should solely invest into high cap layer ones and not low cap layer ones. Now, my main philosophy surrounding that, it is simply due to the fact that we have many high quality, high cap layer ones. There are so many. HBAR, Casper, Sui, Say, Sol, the list goes on infinitely.
And they're good projects as well.
Exactly. They're very fundamentally strong with institutional backing. But when we look at other narratives, let's say RWA, there's only one RWA high cap, and that's Ondo, which means investors are forced to look to lower market cap coins, which is why it's okay to invest into lower market cap coin RWA. Because people invest into Ondo, and once Ondo pumps, or people want low cap alternatives of Ondo, well, guess what? You have to go small cap. You have to go 100 million market cap, 200 million market cap, 50 million, 20 million. Because there's only like 10 solid RWA tokens. And that is the same for AI. Because AI, we have Tau, that's the main AI high cap. Then we have things like FET, Render. But then after those three, it's basically just lower market cap coins, virtuals, Ionet, Griffin. We get to these lower market cap AI coins. Therefore, investors are forced to do so. But for layer ones, they aren't. There's probably like 100, 200 plus high cap layer ones. So you don't need to go lower market cap. That's why it's okay to invest into low cap AI, low cap RWA, low cap gaming, right? But it's not necessarily favorable to invest into low cap layer ones because They'll never get the day of light. There's just too many layer one high caps. It's not worthwhile. So my philosophy this cycle, diversify into the major narratives. AI is performing very well in the real world. It's going to continue to perform well in crypto. We've had 3 consecutive AI rallies. That's not going to stop. I've made most of my money with AI. Keep that in mind. RWA is a guaranteed narrative as well. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, again, largest asset manager in the world, trillions of dollars of assets under management. They have said themselves, Larry Fink said that tokenized assets is the future of crypto. Therefore, why am I sat here thinking I know more than the people that control the world and control the markets? I don't. Therefore, I should invest into RWA coins too. Then when you move on to other narratives like gaming performed so well last cycle. There is no way that it's not going to perform well this cycle. Gaming was one of the biggest narratives last cycle. It's going to continue to perform well. So again, gaming is worthwhile to get exposure to. Things like DeFi and layer ones, high cap cryptos only, say, Sui, projects like that. If you want to go for DeFi, you have things like Hyperliquid, of course, or better to go for maybe some exchange tokens. For example, maybe not the Radium exchange, but the Jupiter exchange is a good example to go for. Very undervalued, in my opinion. Things like RWA, you have Ondo going lower in market cap. You have things like Parcel, for example, on Solana. Going for gaming, you have things like Beam if you want a high cap, or Corpo if you want a low cap. You know, going for AI, you have many choices. I like to separate AI and AI agents. I think they are separate narratives because they don't perform simultaneously. They perform separately. Mm-hmm. So, you know, good AI coins are things like Tau for high caps, or AI Tech, AGI for low caps. In terms of AI agents, we have projects like Virtual's Protocol for higher market caps, or things like Swarms for lower market cap. You know, any of those coins will be fine. Any of those coins will probably make you a boatload of money this cycle.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone who is interested, Seth does have, like I said before, he has his own Discord group. And I'm sure the mods will put a link in the chat. So Seth, what should retail investors be looking or watching for over the next couple of months?
I think they need to exercise patience and wait for monetary policies to be passed that would actually influence liquidity flow into markets. I think anything other than that is somewhat pointless. Like sitting here and getting worried over the tariffs and Xi Jinping and Trump battling of the egos in regards to tariffs is simply a waste of time. Sitting here waiting for the next rate cut or rate hike, well, that's going to make a big difference. I'm sure when we get the next, rate cut, that's going to trigger altcoin season, isn't it? Of course, it's not going to trigger altcoin season. We're waiting for more significant affecting monetary policies to be passed that would actually trigger liquidity to flow into market and cause an altcoin season. So I think that's the most important thing. Number one is exercise some patience, be stoic, and wait for significant monetary policies to be passed that would influence liquidities flowing into markets. So those three things.
Okay, awesome. So Seth, you've dropped so much alpha today. So thank you so much for that. Do you have any final words of caution, or actually you've just done caution, of encouragement for the retail investor or trader watching?
I don't think words of encouragement really work well with crypto investors. Ultimately, you can tell them have hope things will play out well, of course, but they'll still point fingers and call you a scammer at the end of the day. I think most people just need to grow up, exercise some stoicism, grow a pair of balls, maybe some people would say. People are too emotional this cycle. They need to exercise some emotional maturity. Not cry at every crash in the market. Like ultimately, I understand that things are down 90%. But what people need to realize is we're all in the same boat. There's no point in whining and spreading constant negativity over and over and over and over again. It's mostly just cope due to lack of emotional expression and maturity. So I think most people need to grow up, exercise stoicism, be more emotionally mature. And also, actually, the number one thing I want to say is don't expect change if you haven't changed. And what I mean by that is if you didn't sell back in March, right? That's what you're beating yourself over about. I wish I sold. Have you done anything? Have you changed in any single way that will cause you to now change and be different and now sell? Because if you think, oh, this time I'll just sell because I should have sold last time, you're not going to sell. You haven't actually changed. If you spend this whole time just complaining that altcoins are down, altcoins are dumping, they're down 90%, and you just whined over this last year, complain every day, you haven't changed. So what makes you think you're actually going to change? If you haven't changed, don't expect change. If you haven't gone away, maybe learn macroeconomics, learn technical analysts, look at the signals, look at exit signals, then why would you expect yourself to do anything different this time? Because I'm telling you, the moment everything goes up, you're going to be a moon boy again. You're going to be calling for things to 100x tanks, and you're not going to take profits because you haven't changed. Don't expect change. For example, with me, in my private community, we've gone away, we've built a document with every single possible exit strategy, every single possible exit signal that influences Bitcoin and altcoins, so that the moment we're up there, up 20x, 30x, whatever, once, let's say 70% of those signals fire, or even 50% of those signals fire, we can start to take profits. We have changed, so we can actually change and not make the same mistake. So that's the one thing I will maybe leave it at. If you haven't changed, don't expect change.
That's amazing. That's really, really good, Seth. Seth, thank you so much for being here today on my first live stream with another Brit, which is amazing.
Rule Britannia.
Yeah, I know. And there's so many Brits in the chat. And have you read the stuff that they're saying about you in the chat, that you're so handsome and they like you a lot?
I haven't really been reading that, no, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We need Britain to prevail again one day, because right now it is failing. Not to get onto the politics of that.
It is so much. So that's brilliant. So thank you so much for everyone who's here. Thanks to everyone in the chat. I've been reading the chat as we've been going along. It is hilarious. Thank you to all my mods, and thank you so much for to Seth as well.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.